You are now listening to an exclusive interview with the baddest man on the airwaves, Mr. Saturday Night.
Hello.
Jim, I want to first of all say thank you and welcome you to the program as our celebrity guest star this evening. I know.
Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Trust me. I know you are probably just days away from heading back out on tour again.
Yeah, we're going out to Phoenix on Friday. We play Saturday. We always go out a day early because you never know what's going to happen with travel.
Oh, sure.
And so we're playing there Saturday. We come back Sunday. Piece of cake.
Oh, no kidding! Wow. And you're let me think. You're with Tommy James, our friend of the program.
Yep.
Oh,
matter of fact.
Fantastic. Listen, you are a founding member, of course, and have an incredible legacy with the association. Numerous hits on the Billboard charts. 1960, including Windy, Cherish, Never My Love, Along Comes Mary, and many more. And stop me along the way if I get off track here, but you were born in the South in Alabama, correct?
Birmingham, Alabama.
Okay,
been
there, nice place. And then at a young age, you moved to Burbank, California.
Beautiful downtown Burbank.
No, I know your dad was I want to say a radio broadcaster and wanted to get involved in the film industry. Is that why you moved?
Yeah, he was a professional musician. I mean, he had a big band when he was a teenager, but he was an incredible piano player, accordionist. When it came down to hiring the accordion player for the Lawrence Welk show, it came down to him, and I got forgotten the other guy's name that was his accordion player forever. But that guy was, in town, connected. My dad was this, unknown guy from Alabama, but he was equally as good. A really incredible musician. And he wanted to get involved in the music industry, the film industry, and he did. And I think the first thing he did was the Fort Apache, the John Wayne movie.
Oh, not a bad first project. No, not at all. That's great.
When they have a dance out at the fort and the band comes in, my dad's the accordion player.
Unbelievable. Would you say you and your brother Jerry, I don't know if there were other siblings along the way, would you say that influenced you, his background, his love for music?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there was always music in the house and always singing. There were my mom's sister, our aunt, died in the process of childbirth, and my mom took on her two boys, which were the same age as my younger brother. One was my younger brother's age, one was my older brother's age. So there was 5 of us, all within 5 or 6 years of each other.
Oh God.
And so like going over to grandma's, so it wasn't total chaos in the car with my mom driving, because my dad was usually playing a gig, or maybe we were going to a gig he was playing. My mom would teach us songs, and we would all sing in the car to keep her from going crazy.
Unbelievable.
So there was a lot of that. Plus, my brother and I both grew up in a parochial school, and by the 3rd grade, you're singing 4-part Latin masses. So, whether you wanted to or not. That's just the way it was.
And legend has it that walking to school, you used to play harmonica. True?
That's right. That was my first instrument. It was only like 2 blocks from school, and I would walk and I would play the harmonica on the way to school and on the way home. So not blues harp, not cross harp as they call it, just regular, Oh Susanna, stuff like that.
How long was it before you went from harmonica to piano?
Well, I was in a falconry club when I was a teenager, and I joined it when I was, I think, about 15 or 16, and there were, older guys. And the guy who ran it was a school teacher, a music teacher. And one of the older guys, he was probably in his late 20s, early 30s. was from, there were three brothers who were from South Side Chicago, and the older one played boogie woogie piano. And the guy who was a music teacher, we had meetings for the Falconry Club in his garage, which was all paneled and everything. And then there was a room behind that, which was his music room, where he, wrote and arranged and taught and all that kind of stuff. And there was a piano in there, and this guy would sit in there and play boogie piano after the meetings. And I would sit there, I was just fascinated, and I would watch him. And when he would get up to go get a beer or, go to the restroom or whatever, I would sit down and I would try and figure out what he was doing. Mm-hmm. And then he would show me stuff. And so eventually I wound up playing boogie woogie piano, which just freaked my dad out because he had no idea, that I was doing this. And we didn't have a piano at that time in the house, and I wound up renting a piano, which it just, my dad was just glowing. So, we would play together and stuff like that. But growing up, he was in bands that would play around the LA area. And not rock bands. These were legit
ensembles,
playing all the old, playing all the old standards and that stuff. And they would rehearse at our house sometimes, and I would fall asleep under the piano or behind the drums or whatever.
Goodness.
So the music was always in the house, and my dad would play, my mom would sing. I mean, it was really, really cool stuff. So that was definitely an influence, but he never pushed that. It just, if we wanted lessons, he would say, cool, and he would get us lessons. And my younger brother had violin lessons, clarinet lessons, and eventually guitar lessons. And then he got into guitar a couple of years before I did, and then he taught me how to play, and we started performing as a duo. And that, eventually led to actually getting in the business.
I think you just answered my question. My question would have been self-taught on piano and instruments?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Just, you learn as you go.
Now this fascinates me. You then, and did you enlist, or were you're in Germany in the Army, right?
Yes, I enlisted. I was a regular Army, RA all the way.
and you're in combat, but you get pulled out. Why?
Not combat. It was peacetime. I went in 61, got out in 64. I was in Germany originally in an artillery unit, 280 millimeter cannon. But I was trained to be a radar repairman, ground-to-ground radar, and I was all gung-ho, and I wanted to do that. So I kept putting in it for a transfer. They didn't want to let me go, but they finally did. I wound up in a medium tank battalion, and they were authorized the radar also, but they didn't have it either. The first outfit didn't have that radar. So anyway, they put me in the commo section, repairing radios for tanks. There were two other guys in that section. One was a jazz guitarist from the Village, and the other was from Massachusetts. He had been in a folk group in college, and my brother and I had been, a folk duo. So the three of us wound up getting together. We put a show together. We wrote songs. We took old folk songs and wrote parodies about the Army, like Hush Little Baby, Don't You Cry became Hush Little Lifer, Don't You Cry. Puff the Magic Dragon became Yuck the Honey Wagon.
That's the best.
The MTA, the Kingston Trio song, Did He Ever Return? No, he never. Was about a readiness test, and the guy gets lost in his APC. Did he ever return? Yeah. And we sent a tape off to the entertainment director in Nuremberg. They freaked. They pulled us out of our outfit and sent us all over Germany and France entertaining the troops. We did that for a little over a year. That was a marvelous time.
In a million years, did you ever think that would happen?
God, no. Absolutely not. I mean, it was just a wonderful time. And then the other two guys had been drafted, so they got out a year before I did. And then the entertainment director wound up sending me around to all the places we had played as a solo.
Oh, that's perfect. Though that is, if you're gonna, I mean, that's not bad duty, as they would say.
Yeah. The group was called the Yester Years.
Oh,
one
perfect.
of the other guys named it. And then he sent me out as Jimi Yester, the conquering hero.
Oh, how amazing! And then, did you say you get out in '64, and '66 you're asked to join the association, right?
Yeah, well, I got out of the Army, and my brother started in about '62 or '63 with a group called the Modern Folk Quartet. They were like a 4 freshman folk group, incredible harmonies, and each guy was like a lead singer. And so when I got out of the Army, I got out in Brooklyn Navy Yard. My brother was living in the village. All 4 of the guys lived in the village. So I was staying with my brother, and their manager kept sending me around to audition for guys, with guys that were starting groups or whatever. But in the middle of that, my dad, back home was in an auto accident, and my mom and dad were running a restaurant in Joshua Tree, California. And my mom says, I need you to come home. We need help at the restaurant. So I wound up getting a ride to California, went to Joshua Tree. My mom said, here, put on this apron. You're a short order cook. You're a bartender. You're washing the dishes. So I did that for about 4 or 5 months. And my mom and I got in an argument, and I jumped in the car with my guitar. I had been playing while my dad's in the hospital. I'm playing behind his piano bar with my 12-string guitar and, playing a little bit of piano. But anyway, I went down to L.A. and I was, looking for a job as a bartender, and did that for a couple of days. And then I said, no, I don't want to do this. So I called the Pasadena Ice House. My brother and I had known the people there. We had never played there, but we knew the people there. So I called Bob Stain and I said, can I audition as a single? And he said, sure, come out Wednesday and you can play between the acts or whoever is, on the bill. And I called the Troubadour. And I asked the same thing. Yep, come on in Friday, and you can, audition between the regular act. So Wednesday, I go out to the Pasadena Ice House. I perform. Bob Stain pulls me back on stage and says, "Good news and bad news. The bad news is I can't use you right now. The good news is a couple of my friends were here tonight. They're putting a group together. They want you to call them." And I had taken a phone number off of the bulletin board in the club, and it said non-folk group, forming, interested, and, left a phone number. So I had taken the phone number off the thing. Turns out it was the same phone number as someone gave me. So I call him, and it's the guys, starting the association. And so I went over, I called them, I went over, I heard them sing, they heard me sing. We started working together 2 or 3 hours, working on songs together. And Jules pulls me aside and he says, "Come back in 3 days and you can move in. See that guy over there? He'll be gone."
And did he know that yet?
One of the guys, no, he didn't know that yet. One of the guys wasn't working out. He was kind of in a different direction. So
Gotcha.
3 days I came back and, and I moved in, and there was 4 of us lived together: Ted Bluchel, Russ Jaguar, Jules Alexander, and myself. And that house that we lived in is where we rehearsed every day. The other 2 guys were married or in serious relationships and had their own places.
Sure.
So that would be, 6 days a week, 6 to 8 hours every day. We rehearsed, we arranged, we did choreography, we did everything. for 6 months before we worked anywhere. When we first started working, people were scared. They said, "Holy cow, where did these guys come from?" Because we had all the choreography, wrote our own songs. I mean, everything. Back then, there was kind of a bugaboo about doing other people's material.
Right.
So we didn't do top 40. We could have got a lot more work if we had, but we decided, we were going for the long haul. We were doing our own stuff and hoping we would make it doing that, and that's actually what happened.
And you signed with Jubilee Records and released your first album pretty quickly.
No, actually, with Jubilee, we only released singles.
I think Jubilee was
Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You.
Right.
Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You, and maybe Every Time I See You Smile. I can hear the song in my head, but I can't remember the name of it.
No, we love it.
Yeah. We just did singles with them, and then we actually wound up singing. We auditioned for everybody in LA, and they all turned us down. Motown was very interested, but they didn't. Oh, actually, Motown was interested in the Men, which is what the association came out of. And the Men was 13 guys, and that happened as a result of a hootenanny at the Troubadour. But anyway, there was the 6 guys. We auditioned for finally Valiant Records. There was 3 guys sitting in the middle of the room, nobody else in the club. We're on stage. There's 3 guys sitting there, and they're all sunglasses on and sitting there looking at us and not moving. And we did 5 songs, and they really liked. There was a Bob Dylan song we did, which was actually our first release with them, One Too Many Mornings. And they wound up signing us. And Barry DeVorzon, who was their A&R guy, he wound up producing our first record. I think, I'm trying to remember what was on the other side. It might have been Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You. We did that. The Men had done that, and we wound up with a different arrangement. But anyway, it didn't do anything. It went up to like 16 in LA, something like that. And then we talked Barry into letting a friend of ours produce us. He really had very little experience as a producer, but we really felt really good about him. And I don't know why, but Barry let us do it, brought him in, and we recorded 5 things, that we had been doing for a while. Because by that time we were working regularly at the Pasadena Ice House, and building up a fan club, building up a following.
Sure.
But anyway, Jules, all of us were doing other things to make money, like playing on demo sessions for other people, that kind of stuff. And Jules played bass for somebody else's demo session, and came home with an acetate of Along Comes Mary that he had done the demo on that night. We started working on it the next day. That wound up being our first hit. So it's weird how that stuff happens, It's just, and I learned later that my brother's group had also gotten the demo of that song, but they got it after.
Oh, well, timing is everything, right?
Yes, timing.
But you know what? Honestly, probably the right band got the song. You know what I mean? I mean, who knows? Everyone, treats a song a little. It has a different sound, and it was magic for you guys. So.
Yeah, it was. And one thing that helped was the guy that wrote it was a friend of ours. He would hang out with us at the Troubadour, and he was kind of the last of the Kerouac generation, kind of a beatnik guy, and a jazz piano player. If you listen to Along Comes Mary spoken instead of sung, it's scary. I mean, it's incredible. I used to do it as a reading, when I did solos. I remember that the first time I did it was at the Pasadena Ice House, and I did it as a reading, and then and it gets to the end of the song, and now my empty cup tastes as sweet as the punch, and the light goes out, and there was dead silence, and I went into the next song, and my cousin was there, and he came back to the dressing room afterwards. He says, I think the people were expecting you to play the song after that. So that's from then on, that's what I did. But it was scary the first time.
How long then until Cherish, Windy, Never My Love chart? Do you know? Is it a year?
Well, Cherish, we had a second release after Along Comes Mary. Was a song I wrote, No Fair at All. Oh, wait a minute. No, I take that back. That was later. Cherish was not one of the songs, the first 5 songs that we recorded. We thought it was just an album cut. And we had been doing it, for, at least a year. It had gone through 2 vocal arrangements, and we were playing at, what's it called? It's down in Huntington Beach, it's gone.
That's all right.
85, and things go away.
Of course.
But anyway, we were working down there for like a week, and so every day we'd rehearse at the club, and we went through at least another 1.5 more vocal arrangements while we were doing that, and it just worked out. But like I said, we weren't going to release Cherish. The follow-up for Along Comes Mary was going to be Enter the Young, which was the first song on our first album. And DJ in Ohio, I think his name was Reinhardt or Reingold, decided to start playing Cherish, and it went right up to number 1 in his area. And so the record company said, whoa, let's think about this. So we wound up releasing Cherish instead, and it did that. It did the magic thing. It went right up the charts and stayed there for, I can't remember what it was, 5 or 6 weeks, something like that.
Now,
it was just magical.
How old were you at that point? Roughly.
I was, let me see, maybe 26.
Okay.
Because I went from high school, I worked 4 years in 2 different pharmaceutical labs, and then I went in the Army. That was 3 years. So, that was 7 years after high school. So I, got out of the Army when I was almost 25. So I had to be about 26, maybe 26 and a half.
So you're from Alabama via Burbank. You're 26 years old. You now have a number 1 charted song. Could you believe it? I mean, are you kidding me?
Well, listen, when Along Comes Mary came out, 4 of us are in Ted Blueshell's 59 Chevy. We're going over 405, which goes from the valley over the hill down into Santa Monica and all that kind of stuff. We were going to a music store, and Along Comes Mary comes on the radio the first time we hear it, and everybody except Ted, who was driving, is sitting on the windowsill outside of the car with just our legs in the car, screaming and hollering and beating on the roof of the car. We went crazy. I mean, you just can't believe that feeling. Oh my God, we're on the radio. Listen to that. Well, hot number 1. I mean, going up, it's a bullet.
Can you imagine? So talk to me about 1967, the Monterey Pop Festival. What do you remember most? There's some kind of interesting stories about that. And what do you remember most about that?
Well, the neat thing was it was so much camaraderie. I mean, it wasn't like competition. It was like a big party. I mean, it was so cool. But the thing is, there was a certain element of that didn't think we belonged there. They thought we were too, too business core, the suits and the ties.
Oh, sure.
And everybody else is, not plaids. What is paisley? Everybody's paisley and bell bottoms.
Mm-hmm.
We're in these 3-piece hop sack suits. But, and then when they introduced us and we come on stage, we're the first act on, and there were 2 sets of drums. One for Hal Blaine, because he's playing for the Mamas and Papas and, a couple other people. And then there was another set that, several other groups were using. And Ted Lachelle had set that up because we were the first group on. And we get out there, here they are, the association. And Ted goes out there, and Hal had thought that was his set and totally set it up for him.
Oh.
And it's totally different than what Ted's setup was. And Ted says, hey, I need like 5 minutes. Help, stall. Oh, my God. So there we are with, hey, here's the association, and we can't do anything. We're out there, hey, how you guys doing? Great to be here.
I could be wrong, but didn't John Phillips from Mamas and Papas introduce you? You might not even remember.
Yes, I believe, because John and Lou were the ones who, their manager, Lou Adler, they were the ones who put the whole thing together. Yes, so John introduced us, but nobody knew that Hal had changed the drums. And I've also heard 2 different stories. One story is that when they introduced us to go on, the film crew wasn't ready.
I've heard that.
They had nothing set up yet, and the sound people were, bolting through their butts trying to get everything set up, and they weren't quite ready. So in a way, it was good that there was a stall thing. And the first song we did was Enter the Young, which didn't make the movie that they shot about it because they weren't ready.
Right.
But the other thing we heard was Pennebaker, who shot that. He was the guy who didn't think we belonged. We were too corporate.
Sure.
We were too, we were not hip.
Yeah.
But, and then we did the association machine, which each, Brian Cole would introduce, and each guy was, like the drummer was a semi-reclined percussive invertebrator. And Terry was an elongated fluting soloist, something like that. But each guy was a part of a machine, and each, were playing a rhythm as he introduces each guy. And then after he introduces the last guy, we go right into Along Comes Mary.
Oh, that's really kind of a genius idea, honestly. How did
it's on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
We did that on the Smothers Brothers show. We were on the Smothers Brothers show 3 times because we were good friends with those guys, and it was just the timing of their show was just coincided with our coming up through the charts and stuff. So they had us on 3 times. We had so much fun with those guys because they would include us in the skits. And I remember singing, "Give me 10 men who are stout-hearted men," and we're all dressed in drag, along with Greer Garson.
Oh.
And Paul Paulson.
Pat Paulson? No?
Pat Paulson, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. We had so much fun with those guys.
I used to live up the coast from San Luis Obispo, and I went to Burbank once, went to the Tonight Show. It was one of the last Johnny Carson's, and anyway, his guests that night were Tommy and Dick Smothers, so I at least got to see them, so.
That had to be great. That had to be great.
All these years,
those guys were so much fun. I dated their sister for a lot of years, Sherry, Tom, Dick, and Sherry.
Oh, you're kidding! No, that's the best.
Wonderful gal. She passed away a couple years ago. Just a sweetheart of a lady.
Oh my God! All these years later. What one lyric, it's odd question, but is there a lyric that you've sung a million times that maybe still gives you the goosebumps?
We always try to do the ultimate when we play Cherish, Never My Love, you can feel the reaction of the audience. It's so visceral. I mean, I get goosebumps and the hair on the back of your neck stands up. And sometimes it's so magical. You just, those are the things you really look forward to, especially in places where it's a little more intimate. Mm-hmm. You're closer where the audience is a lot of times right down to your feet, right where you're playing or standing. And it's just so magical. I sometimes I get so choked up I can barely sing. It's just really that's what you look forward to doing.
Well, the style of your music, the lyrics, the whole package, and then couple that with the time that it was released. It's an experience. It's not you know what I mean? You probably
what you mean.
You probably have tears and everything.
Oh yeah. That was such a magical time to be in the music business, and the people who are our audiences now, most of them were our audience then. And it's so cool because, they're very close to our age. And we do a little bit about that. It's so nice to see, people here of our own age. Thanks for staying up this late to see the show.
Oh, yeah. No, I was talking to, I forget, the Vogues, and I said, what's your encore? He said, honestly, we don't do one because when the show's over, they want to go home, go to bed, take their meds. You know what I mean? They're done. We're good. That's it. Show's over.
You hope you don't get a running ovation.
Oh, that's the best. I want to jump back for you. Oh, go ahead.
We always do. We always do an encore. We have a planned encore, and we hope they bring us back.
I meant
because we all. Go ahead.
No, I was just. I'm sorry. I meant to ask you back to the Monterey Pop for a second. What was the response of all the Paisleys in the crowd?
Oh, it was great. It was great. They loved us. Loved us.
Good.
We, once we went into Along Comes Mary, oh man, that was it. We do a bit on the stage. I mean, when we're doing our show about, singing and, being there in the magic scented air. And, and oh yeah, there were a lot of hippies there, and I guess they didn't have much money because, they're sharing their cigarettes. You could see them,
Oh, sure. So you've been nominated for, if I've counted correctly, is it 6 Grammy Awards? Does that sound right?
Yeah, a lot of different. We never won one, unfortunately, but yeah, we got nominated a lot for albums, for album covers, for different songs. We had a Golden Globe nomination for "Goodbye Columbus." I wrote the title song for that, and we had 2 other songs in the movie. Yeah, a lot of Grammys and Golden Globes, but we didn't win any of them, unfortunately.
Well, listen, to get invited to the big dance, just to be nominated, come on. I mean, that's 6 times. So you're doing something right. You're on the Ed Sullivan Show. You're on, and here's a show I haven't thought of in years, but I loved it. Red Skelton Hour. You remember that, right? You were on that.
Oh yeah, we did Skelton. We did Dean Martin. We did the Tonight Show. We did the Smother. We did 52 major television shows in a period of about 2 years. So you couldn't get away from us. We were everywhere.
by today's standards back then, I mean, were you making some money? Do you know what I mean? There's so many stories.
We were making good money then. Unfortunately, we probably didn't, do the smart things with it. We invested in things,
sure,
and we wasted money. But yeah, it was good.
Yeah, there's so many stories of bad managers, bad record labels, just bad timing.
Well, unfortunately, yeah. Sometimes managers, they have their own direction they're going, and And the record company too has different ideas. So you never know. We were very fortunate. We were so well structured when we started. Our first manager was an actor. He was a cowboy actor at first, and then he was in a lot of cowboy movies. Then changed his name was Freddie Foote. Then he changed his name to Dean Fredericks and became Colonel Steve Canyon on TV. So he was around in Hollywood. He knew the business inside and out. He had us, he was our manager. He had us a lawyer. He had us a booking agent. He had us a PR firm. He had accountants. I mean, everything was structured.
Good.
And we had contracts. I mean, we had a publishing contract. We auditioned for Capitol. They wouldn't sign us, but they wouldn't let us leave the building until we gave them an appointment with their publisher, because 6 of us, and we're all writing songs. And when we signed our publishing deal, normally publisher gets 50%, artist gets 50%. Well, 50% of what publisher got was divided between the other 5 guys that didn't write the song. So everybody would be involved in each other's publishing. So nobody, if something like Terry Kirkman wound up being the most prolific writer of the group, and he wrote several of our big songs, but we all share in those songs, and we all put the work in for those songs. So, that was unheard of at the time. Okay. And I bless the lawyer who came up with that, because I'm still enjoying it today.
Oh, perfect. What's the story, if there even is one, behind the song Windy?
Windy, there was a gal who's a really good friend of ours, Ruth Ann Friedman, who was became our den mother. She moved into the area, had no place to stay. She wound up sleeping on the couch in our living room, where the 4 of us lived. Great gal. She wrote really avant-garde songs. They were really out there. Nice stuff, but not something you would normally hear on the radio.
Right.
Songs about, acid trips and stuff like that. She went up to San Francisco one weekend, and when she came back, she said, listen, while I'm up in San Francisco, I wrote a kind of a contemporary song about the sky up there. And she sat down cross-legged on the kitchen floor and played the guitar and sang the song for us. And she said, you can change the lyrics to make it about a girl, but it was about this free spirit guy up in San Francisco named Windy. And so we said, well, that's cool. We'll play it for Bones. We had changed. Our second album was produced by my brother, Jerry.
Yep.
And when we signed to do our third album, which was when we signed with Warner Brothers, they wanted us to change producers, and we wound up, our manager had wanted us to try Bones Howe, who was the engineer for the Mamas and Papas album, the first one. Now, Bones had never produced anybody, but he was a studio guy. He was, really good in the studio. And we were the first act that he ever produced. And they wanted us, change producers. In fact, with my brother, we had recorded Never My Love and Requiem for the Masses, which wound up becoming the B-side for Never My Love. But they wanted us to let the new producer do a version. So that's what we wound up doing, and we used the Wrecking Crew, and it just was so magical. Those guys were such a pleasure to work with. You wouldn't believe the musicianship. They could play anything, any key, and took direction, and no egos, and just incredible. They would get stuff in a half hour that would take us maybe 4 or 5 hours to get, and it wouldn't be as good as what they did. But, then we did what they did on stage. So it all worked out. We were a self-contained band. There was a lot of bands back then that had a band that played behind them, and they were, did the 4 guys or 5 guys up front. They're usually 3 or 4 guys, where they were the group, and the band was just a backup band. But we were a self-contained band, and we played and sang and wrote and arranged and did everything. But anyway, so that worked out really well. That Bones, the reason I brought that up is because we said, we like the song, let's play it for Bones. We played it for Bones, and he said, I have an idea for that. Well, he had a wicked idea.
I thought you were going to... No, go ahead.
A great bass player from the Wrecking Crew named Ray Pullman. Ray did the charts for that song under the direction of Bones, and when we heard what they did with it, just blew us away. And when we recorded it, put the vocals on and the sweetening, we always did sweetening, where we would play other stuff after the guys did the basic track. And that was common back in the day. You had studio guys do the track, and then you do your thing to the track. But it was such a fun process because we had none of the pressure of getting a great track, and these guys would do great track after great track after great track. Guys like Larry Knechtel, Hal Blaine, Joe Osborne on bass, Ray Pullman on big fat acoustic, big band guitar. It's just such a pleasure to work with those guys.
Now,
and that album had a vocal arranger who was the top tenor of the Hi-Lows.
Oh,
amazing, vocal arrangements. Clark Burroughs, wonderful guy. He would sit on a stool, cross-legged on a stool, facing us, and we're in a semicircle, 2 guys, 2 tenors, 2 baritones, 2 basses facing him, and he's got the earphones on, and he's, coaching us like a director or a maestro of an orchestra.
Sure.
You a little closer, you a little back, loud, up, down, all that stuff. Oh, it was wonderful stuff.
90. So once or twice over the years, I believe you briefly left, or maybe not even briefly, left the band for a while.
Oh God, I left the band for a long while.
Yeah. And then was it 91 to 94? You joined your brother Jerry with 11 Spoonful, right? 91 maybe to 92. I was only with a Spoonful for about a year. Oh, okay.
But it was so much fun. It was my brother, myself, Joe, and Steve, and then we wound up. We originally put the band back together with just the 4 of us, and then we wound up. Joe was doing so many of the leads that we brought Joe up front and got another guy to play drums. They got a young guy from Chicago to play drums, and that worked out really well. And but yeah, I was with them for a year, and then they wanted. I was still living in Hawaii, and they wanted me to come back to the mainland because they were having to fly me in and out of Hawaii all the time. So I wound up coming back to the mainland, living in Arkansas. A friend of ours from Hawaii who had helped the MFQ build their own studio in Hilo, Hawaii, he wound up settling in Arkansas, and we said, Arkansas, geez. I was on the road with a Spoonful, and I said, let me see what's going on with him. So I went down there, and I was there 2 days, wound up buying a house for $500 down and a handshake.
And Jerry still lives there, doesn't he?
Yeah, Jerry lives in Harrison, Arkansas.
Oh,
and I live just outside of Harrison in Dog Patch, Arkansas.
Oh, great name. By the way, I spoke with him yesterday, and I was supposed to ask you how the bingo calling is coming along.
Well, I called today.
Oh, did you?
You know, it's amazing because calling bingo actually keeps my voice in good shape, because I call for, about an hour and a half, hour and 20, 3 days a week, every other week. And it's great fun. I mean, it's a senior center, and the people are just so sweet and nice, and I've made really marvelous friends, and I enjoy it so much. And it started, my wife was looking for something to do in the days because she wasn't working anymore, and she wound up going there first. And she did it for a couple of weeks, and then she kept trying to get me to come, and so eventually I went. And eventually they asked me if I would be interested in calling, and I wound up being the only caller. I did it, 5 days.
That's a lot of
3 days a week, every week.
That's a lot
now
of pressure.
I do it every other week. But it's great fun, and we do silly stuff like, B11 is chicken legs, B11.
Oh, that's the best.
And 75 is Big Daddy, 75.
Oh, I love it. You're so perfectly suited for that. You know that? You really are. Hey, are you doing, I know you're heading out to, I believe you said Arizona, but are you doing this year, the Happy Together tour, or some of those dates?
I don't know. We haven't been asked. The group did it last year. I wound up having to pass last year.
Oh, okay.
I just couldn't handle the 60 days on a bus.
Oh, yeah.
I've got a leg problem. I blew out my left knee, and I've been walking with a cane. I had just, in fact, 2 years before, when the pandemic hit, we were on the road with the Happy Together tour, and I wound up getting COVID in Indianapolis and wound up in 4 weeks and 3 weeks in the hospital, 4 weeks in rehab, all in Indianapolis. And they told my wife they didn't think I was going to make it. And she lost her mind. Oh my God!
Some of those early strains of COVID were awful. There were a lot of people.
I got the second strain, the Delta or whatever they called it, and it was rough. I had to learn to walk again. I mean, you don't realize it. You're bedridden for 6 or 7 weeks. There's a lot of stuff goes away. It's just weird.
Which is also,
and you have to learn to do it all over again.
Also a shame, because otherwise I'm a big fan of Indianapolis, but I don't know how 3 weeks in a hospital feels, but I guess if it's got to be somewhere, might as well be Indianapolis, I suppose.
It was an experience, I got to say that. Yeah. Unfortunately, my wife suffered a lot more than I did, because of what she had to deal with. She couldn't go to Indianapolis, and even if she could, they wouldn't let her in.
Oh, I remember
because
that.
It's COVID. Yeah. So it was a terrible ordeal for her. But I wound up getting through it, and then eventually getting back on the road. But if they do it again, I'm not even sure if they're going to do it again, but they'll probably find a way to do it. And I'll have to deal with that decision then. So
sure.
I'm sure my wife doesn't want me to go, but we'll see how it works out. I did, last year, although I wasn't on the tour, they came to Atlantic City, which is 12 miles from where I live, and so I did the Atlantic City show with them. So that was great. It was
perfect.
Good fun. I got to see everybody again, and the people who are on the tour. I mean, the camaraderie is off the charts. I mean, we were, for 3 or 4 summers, there were 2 buses, and we were on the bus with the Cowsills and all the tech crew and Chuck Negron and his wife. And, oh, God, I mean, it's just off the charts. You wouldn't believe how cool the camaraderie is.
I have heard that from a number of artists that were also on that tour, and the consensus basically is that the Cowsills are a hoot. I think
they're wonderful.
I can't remember who.
We got so close with them, we call ourselves the Conciliation.
Someone was telling me, I don't recall the group, but basically when the other group came off stage, the Cowsills would be sitting there with signs, like rating them like 9.5, 10.
Oh yeah,
and it just. I mean, if you're going to be in 60 dates in a bus, that's probably the only rational way to survive is having that kind of camaraderie,
Yeah, and every night, the Cowsills were always the first act on because they really warm the audience up, and they're great at that. And we would all be backstage with them on, in the wings, singing along with them to warm up. So, I mean, we know all their material.
That's fantastic. Great. Listen, I cannot thank you enough. I've taken a big chunk of your evening. Honestly, I feel like I have so many questions we never even got to. So I will probably
we have to do it again.
Well, that's where I'm headed. I'm going to probably call you back in about 6 months and check up, and we can get to part 2 of this conversation.